With Nintendo, I've always been an outsider looking in, not owning a Nintendo console until the Nintendo Switch. It's a company I've always associated with family-friendly content, with Nintendo only ever giving a shit about Mario or Zelda. Don't believe me? Well, you can play around 20 Mario games on the Switch, but what about F-Zero? What about Star Fox? Now you might be wondering, why does someone like me, who grew up with this, and this, care? It's because, with Nintendo's over-reliance on Mario, there are franchises that get buried. And this franchise is not only one of Nintendo's most mature, but also one of their best. This is the show where I look at games I never grew up with to determine if they still hold up. This is No-stalgia. Metroid Prime is the first 3D game in the Metroid series. It's been around since 1986, and even though it's still beloved amongst fans today, and it's historically groundbreaking, the whole series has sold worse than a lot of single games from Nintendo. Metroid Prime stars the lone bounty hunter Samus Aran, investigating a distress beacon from a nearby space frigate. Samus is one of the coolest characters Nintendo has ever created, carrying herself with such gravitas without saying a word. What? A strong female character? I thought you had to get a series starring a man and gender swap it. Where's the woman empowerment moment? Thankfully, Nintendo managed to create good, compelling characters without adding any political BS on top of it.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Speaking of attacks, Samus arrives at the frigate in her classic gunship, and what an entrance does she make. With the opening to any game, there has to be a balance between teaching the player the controls and keeping the player engaged, whilst also setting a tone for the rest of the adventure. Metroid Prime is the perfect fusion of all of these. The game shows the player how to proceed, making the game easy for new players without halting the action with text boxes, so that returning players can get straight into the action. Most games would start with a huge firefight, but Prime has restraint. You move slowly through the ship, to find bodies, not of scientists, not of civilians, but of space pirates. Broken containers are everywhere, and creatures known as parasites are scattering about the place. Something has gone horribly wrong, and Samus, the player, would want to know why. There is rubble everywhere, and even the pirates that are alive are wounded and easy to take down, making context not only in the story, but also as a way to ease the player into the game. Reading logs around the station only revealed that they're researching something, and it got out of hand. Further exploration reveals the first boss in the game, the Parasite Queen, a creature of unknown origin. Upon defeating the first boss, the ship is going to blow. Samus has to get out of there as quickly as she can, as she is attacked by Ridley, the leader of the space pirates, and the same creature that had killed her parents years ago. But there is no time to wait on ceremony. She has to get out of there, but an explosion takes away most of her abilities. Despite being battered and bruised, she has to give chase, following Ridley to the nearby planet of Talon 4. Now after this adrenaline pumping beginning, what could happen next? I'm so excited! Samus is alone, with no clear direction. Just the sound of footsteps and the quiet melody is all the player can hear. Metroid Prime's biggest strength is its dedication to immersion and atmosphere. You're playing in a first-person view, with the information on the visor appearing as your HUD. Your vision is cloudy underwater. When you're near electrical enemies, your visor will malfunction. You can even see the reflection of Samus's eyes when a blast goes off. This helps put the player in the shoes of Samus, helping you feel connected to everything going on. The areas that you travel between all have a distinct identity, with their own lore and ecosystem, with flora and fauna unique to each location. From the dusty dunes of the Chozo ruins, to the raging hot temperatures of Magmore Caverns. But my favourite location is Phendrana Drifts. After travelling through the Magmore Caverns, you're left into this beautiful landscape which I admittedly brought up just to show off this incredible music. I've never found such a perfect combination of sound design and music, at times unable to distinguish between the two. One of my favourite instances is later on in the game. You find a ship with injured pirates outside. Not just any ship, the one that you were in at the start of your journey. And though the first time you were in there, it was intense. This time, it's quiet. And it's beautiful, with this melodic piece in the background as you explore the ship. Never has exploration in a game felt so rich. This would all fall apart, of course, if the level design wasn't constructed well. There are 5 main areas to explore. They're all interconnected though, unfortunately. Some are more connected than others. Vendrana Drift, for example, is only connected to Magmoor Caverns, so if you want to travel to any other place, you have to go through Magmoor. I'd rather have every area be more connected, making backtracking less of a pain. Backtracking is something you have to do a lot, as it is baked into the series. You're facing roadblocks constantly, a door you can't open, a ledge you can't reach. I always found these super memorable, especially earlier on when my options were limited. It always had me excitingly running back to an area I couldn't get past once I had the correct means to do so. Progression is always limited by Samus's equipment. You start off with a few tools under your belt, but after Samus loses her abilities in an explosion, you are left with the ability to jump, shoot, and that's pretty much it. However, after collecting a few upgrades through exploration and taking out a few bosses, it's not long before you can fire missiles, charge your cannon, even change beam types. These are not only useful in combat, but also for opening specific doors, or even obtaining optional goodies, like missile capacity upgrades or energy tanks. You actually get new items before you recover all the ones that you lost. This was a strong decision as it clues the player into the idea that there's a lot more to this game to offer than they might have originally expected. Some of these items can help you with traversal, like the high jump boots or the grapple beam, making backtracking less of a pain. One of the most unique items in Samus's arsenal is the Morph Ball, allowing Samus to turn into a ball. I always found this immensely satisfying boosting up the half pipes or clinging onto magnetic rails. Getting these upgrades aren't too cryptic. The game does offer a hint system. Optional upgrades though, a guide is pretty much mandatory. You'll never know which rooms these items are in. I think the perfect fix for this would be how Resident Evil approaches items. Just let the player know if a room has been emptied of all the upgrades on the map. Just because you know something is in that room doesn't mean you still don't get the thrill of finding out what it is or how to get it. Another thing that's linked to your progression is the scan visor. Scanning things with your visor is the main way that you'll get any context of what's going on. There is a story, one with tons of intrigue, detail and depth, but playing through the game you might not have noticed. This is a somewhat subtle approach to storytelling, but I'm somewhat mixed on. Scanning things just takes me right out of the action. Oh, I'm getting attacked. Better scan that boss. Oh, there's some writings on the wall. Better scan it. Oh no, a wasp is stinging me. Better scan it first. I would have personally preferred a different approach. Maybe you get info on a creature after killing it for the first time. Or maybe the Chozo writings were more like audio logs, so you can listen to them as you're exploring. Either way, I don't think scanning everything should be tied to the secret ending. The ending, and by extension the story, is somewhat bleak. Years ago, a meteor crashed into the planet, later revealed to be Metroid Prime. This creature is made of an element called phazon, which is letting off radiation, slowly killing the planet and its inhabitants for Chozo. The space pirates are using phazon to do some pretty nasty experiments, even on their own kind, and on Metroids. This has been going on for so long that even in victory, the Chozo on Talon 4 are long dead. Ridley has survived his defeat, and the Metroid Prime lives to fight another day, leaving this a shallow victory for Samus. It seems that all the fighting was for nothing. The combat is probably the weakest aspect of Prime. First though, I do have to acknowledge the waggle in the room. See, there are two main ways to play this game, on the GameCube or on the Wii. There are quite a few differences, but the main difference is in the controls, and by extension, the combat. Now there are two rules in life. One, pineapple tastes just fine on pizza, and two, motion controls are bad. So So, as you can probably imagine, the Wii version is better. What the fuck? These are the best FPS controls I've ever used on a console. You have to use the Wiimote as a pointer, which controls Samus's arm cannon. This is the closest console gaming has ever got to the precision of a mouse and keyboard. In the GameCube version, you can only move the camera while stationary. To combat this, he added a really precise lock-on feature. It works, but having the weapon snap to an enemy will never be as satisfying as lining up your shots, which you can't do on the GameCube due to clunky controls. So that's it then. GameCube bad, Wii good, right? Well, not exactly. Both have okay combat, but the main problem stems from the enemies. Enemies will often respawn as soon as you leave the room, leading to frustration like, oh shit, I went the wrong way. Better go back the way I came. Oh no, all the enemies I've fought have already respawned. I guess I'm gonna have to spend ages fighting them again.
Couldn't you just stay dead?
They could have easily made it so enemies don't respawn until you leave the area. Combat, I feel, often lacks satisfaction. I see the power beam hit the enemies, but I never feel like I'm tearing through space pirates. They can often feel like bullet sponges, lacking that kick that you feel when battling enemies in something like Halo. I think the boss battles fare a little bit better, being unique in their design, but by god do these fights age you. Ridley is probably the fight you anticipated the most through the game. His boss fight, however, involves waiting, shooting at him until you can actually do damage, waiting some more. In fact, I barely got through this fight, not because I kept dying, but because I got bored. The combat overall is serviceable, and it doesn't detract from the overall experience. But that was Metroid Prime, and overall, I thought it was... Oh, sorry. I know it seemed like the end of the video, but I've got to travel around the map and collect 12 artifacts. Most of these can be collected late in the game, but it absolutely kills the momentum. It honestly seems like pointless padding. Now, I know I've been negative about a lot of things, so one could assume that I didn't like this game, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The issues, though glaring, never ruined the experience for me, and the positives outweigh the negatives. I love Metroid Prime, and if you haven't played it, give it a go. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you wanted to get your GameCube fix, maybe check out my video on Luigi's Mansion, or Sonic Adventure. As for me, I'm gonna go now, and keep searching for the gold in the old.